What's up, everybody? This is Chris from Slappers Only with our very first Proximity Chat solo. You may recognize me from other internet shows such as our very own Proximity Chat, and then there's yeah, that's about it. So why am I doing a Proximity Chat solo instead of getting Ryan and Adam here? Well, as much as we would like to have a video out for you every week, little things like life, work, bills, that kind of stuff are constantly getting in the way. It's almost like there's a conspiracy or something. I don't know who would do such a thing. Anyway, there are two main topics I'd like to talk about today. Number one, it's the Xbox One versus the PlayStation 4, with the next generation coming out soon. I think that's pretty relevant. And number two, I really want to talk about unrealistic expectations that publishers have about their games and the way it negatively impacts the entire industry. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show. Alright, so way back on June 10th, feels like forever ago at this point, I declared that the PlayStation 4 was the winner of E3 and my console of choice going into the next generation. And I wasn't alone in my assessment. Edge magazine, which is one of the last, real print paper magazines out there, said the same thing. On the cover of their issue after E3, they matter-of-factly said that the PlayStation 4 is your next console. And that's a bold move for a video game magazine to take going into the next generation, because really, when you're talking about the next generation, we're talking about the PlayStation 4 versus the Xbox One. The Wii U doesn't really factor into it. So to matter-of-factly burn one of the two consoles going into it, like I said, they had to be pretty confident of their assessment. And I know that I was, at that time, confident in my assessment of it. I wrote an entire article about it and everything. But in that time, a lot has changed. Microsoft went back on all the policies that the internet raged about at the time. You no longer need an always-on internet connection. You can buy used games, you can sell your games, you can let people borrow your games. And what we have now are two very similar pieces of hardware. Both consoles are running on x86 processors. Both of them have AMD APUs that are 8-core. Both of them have 8 gigs of RAM, although the PlayStation 4's RAM is faster. It's the GDDR5 versus the GDDR3 in the Xbox One, and in my opinion it makes a pretty significant difference there. Both of them have built-in Twitch, like anybody who wants to watch other people play games. Sorry, I lost myself for a second there. So really, at this point, what is the difference between the two? The PlayStation 4 is $100 cheaper. It comes in at $400 versus the $500 for the Xbox One. And, I mean, you're talking about a pretty big difference there. It's $100. What does that $100 get you? It does get you the Kinect 2 if you're into that sort of thing. In my opinion, it's kind of like having a really big touchscreen, like a cell phone. They're not very accurate. They're not very precise. And in my opinion, it just doesn't really add all that much to games. You know what I mean? I mean, sure, you can wave your hand to move from one side of the screen to the next or over to the next page, but you can just as easily press a button, and that right there was a lot easier. Now, if you could open up Minority Report style windows in front of you, I'd be all for it, but you can't. So, I mean, I don't know. A lot of people like Kinect. I'm not one of those people. So for me, going into it, that was a pretty big factor. $100 less, and I don't have to have that Kinect in there. I just, for me, it's a useless piece of hardware. I don't want it. It's really as simple as that. So anyway, like I said, hardware-wise, the two machines are at this point pretty similar. What it comes down to right now is the games, and this is where it gets interesting. At the moment, Sony has Knack, which for whatever reason I really can't get into. It doesn't appeal to me all that much. It has Killzone, which looks pretty cool, and then it has Infamous Second Son, which, those are always some pretty fun games, and I can really get behind that. It does have Drive Club, but as far as racing games go, that doesn't look anywhere near as good as Forza 5. And Microsoft has some other giants as well, such as Titanfall, which to be honest looks pretty amazing. They have Crimson Dragon, Dead Rising 3, Rise. They've already teased us with Halo. That's coming at some point. The point is, Microsoft has a lot of really good-looking games for the system, and I said back on June 10th that I was getting a PlayStation 4, and I still am. It's just that since then, things have gotten a lot more interesting. My point is, right now we've got a real console war going on, and it's going to be decided by the games, and that's where it should be decided, not by the policies or the companies behind them, and I think that's pretty awesome. Alright, so moving on again, I want to talk about publisher expectations, and like I said, I think they have a negative impact on the industry as a whole. So, we're moving on to the next gen where everything is supposed to be bigger, better, faster, more explosions and everything. But I think these publishers need to figure something out, and they need to figure it out fast. Let's start by looking at Square Enix. The new Tomb Raider comes out, it sells 3.4 million copies in its first month, and for Square Enix, that's not enough. They were very disappointed in those numbers. The new Hitman comes out, and it has sold over 4 million copies since it came out last year. And again, it's not enough. They're disappointed with that. Sleeping Dogs came out about the same time last year as Darksiders 2. It's a semi-new property. They transformed it from the original True Crime, what it was supposed to be, into its original property. And it sold about 2 million copies, and again, it's well below expectations for Square Enix. They're disappointed with all three of those games. Let's move forward coming into this next generation. Ubisoft has a new game coming out called Watch Dogs, and you've probably heard of it at this point. It looked really great at first, blew everybody's mind, and I don't know about you guys, but the more I've seen of it, the more it just kind of seems like, I don't want to say it's boring, but it's lost that shine as we've gotten glimpses of more the next gen stuff coming out. Watch Dogs just kind of seems like a little bit been there, done that type of thing. Anyway, Ubisoft has high expectations for this game. They're expecting it to sell 6 million copies. Mind blown. Okay, now THQ, remember them? They put out Darksiders 1, Darksiders 2, and Darksiders 2 ended up moving about 1.5 million copies, which, for a game like that, small little niche audience, it's not a big time game, it seems pretty decent. But 2 million was the break-even point for that, so it didn't even break even, and THQ is no longer here. Bankrupt. They're gone. Literally, Darksiders 2 put them out of business. So, these publishers seem upset, and they seem upset at us. They seem disappointed in us that these games aren't moving the number of copies that they expect them to. They put these numbers out there like we're letting them down. But in my opinion, if a game can sell 3.4 million copies in its first month and not be considered a success, that's on the publishers. That's not on us. These publishers, number one, they act like anything that happens after that first month doesn't exist. It's either instant hit or it's a bust. Second, when you go into any store to buy a game these days, these video game sections have shrunk down to next to nothing, and they only have the biggest games out there. They have 1 billion copies of those biggest games, but that's all they have. So it's like, good luck finding a game that isn't Call of Duty or Madden. If you want a small game, small release, Castlevania, Lords of the Shadow, something like that, you can't find it anymore. Like I said, there's multiple problems here that publishers need to figure out. And here's the thing, look at the flip side. Ryan pointed this out to me. Payday 2 just came out last week, and it was profitable before it ever even came out, just off of the pre-orders alone. Anything outside of this, anything that they sell from here going forward, is all just money in their pocket that they can use to make that game better. They can go ahead and make a Payday 3, they can do whatever they want, because at this point, they've already been successful. They're not expecting these $6 million numbers, or 6 million copies moved. They have reasonable expectations for their game. They do it with constraint and in a budget that they can actually handle, and they're successful. It's kind of crazy how that works, isn't it? So, like I said, there's a solution out there. These big publishers need to find it, and they need to find it fast, because otherwise I think we're going to see the next generation dominated by very high quality indie games that are going to just push these big publishers out of it, because they're not going to be able to compete budget wise. There were 1.5 million people that loved Darksiders 2 as much as I did, and we're never going to get to see a sequel to that because THQ was betting on it, and they went out of business instead. So, like I said, I'm at a loss. I don't know what else to say about that. So, enough of that. It's time to hand out some compliments. And the first compliment I want to give out goes to Ernest Cline, who wrote the book Ready Player One. I just finished it. It literally took me 2 days to read. It's an awesome book. Anybody who likes video games at all should read it, and you're especially going to love it if you're an 80s geek like me. My Ninja Turtles back here, stuff like that. If you were, growing up around that time, you're absolutely going to love this book. It's amazing. I cannot speak highly enough of it. So, second compliment, second shout out goes to the games that I'm currently playing. There's Dark Souls, which should be pretty obvious to anybody who's been, looking at our channel. Payday 2 is awesome. It's the most fun I've had in co-op in a long time. This game is really intense, really fun. I can't it's awesome. You really should play it, and Ryan would agree with me on that. I've been playing Tales of Xillia on PS3, and it's actually really fun. You know, graphics aren't all that amazing. They're good, and like I said, it's the first Tales game that's really got me hooked, so that's really cool, even though I own a ton of them. But it's the first one that's like really got me hooked, and I'm enjoying that. And then there's some Metro Last Light, which hasn't got as much playtime as it deserves. It's really fun though, and I'm gonna have some videos and a review of that coming soon, so keep an eye out for that. And finally, I'd like to throw a shout out to our newest subscriber, and it's Corey. Congratulations, Corey, on being our 53rd subscriber. So that's it for this week, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show, as always. Let me know what you liked and what you didn't like, what you agreed with, what you disagreed with, and what you want to see next week. And thanks for watching.